The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
We need a revolution. There's only one solution. I need somebody to show me the love. We need a revolution.
Hello and welcome to The Revolution. Welcome to Inform Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and streaming live to CHD TV and other platforms. I'm your host, Bernadette Pager, and I am so glad that you could join me here today. Happy New Year, everybody. 2026 is really lining up to be a very good year. We've got a lot of work to do, so make sure you're doing your push-ups and your sit-ups and your laps and you're staying strong and healthy because we've got a lot of really good work to do. But as long as we all work together, I think we're going to emerge with some great things. As always, this hour of Free Speech Radio is brought to you by Informed Choice Washington. That's informedchoicewa.org. I encourage you to go to the website, check it out, sign up to get the Substack newsletter every week. It's an awesome Substack. There's a donate button if you want to drop a little something to keep this show on the air and also to keep the good work they're doing right there in the heart of Washington State, which, as you know, is not currently exactly known for being a health freedom state. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of things that need to change in Washington, and the good folks at Informed Choice Washington are doing that. So every little bit helps. In a way that you can help, this is new, a way you can help Informed Choice Washington without even directly donating. If you shop on Amazon, how about you bookmark informedchoicewa.org, and on the home tab, if there's a link there, if you just click on it and start your Amazon shopping there, a little bit will be donated to this organization, to Informed Choice Washington. So it's a great way for you to feel good about your purchases, and a little bit comes back to Informed Choice Washington. Again, it's right there on the homepage. You will see it says Amazon, and it has the link. I also wanted to tell you about some really important things coming up here. Let me go ahead and share the screen if I can do this quickly. Share screen. I'm a little out of practice, so I'm not. Health Freedom Day. Here we go. So legislative session in Washington State will be happening very soon. And on Thursday, January 15th, there's going to be a rally at the Capitol in Olympia, Washington. There's going to be speakers. Anique St. Martin, who's a chiropractor, will be there. Representative Jim Walsh, who's such an amazing champion for health freedom, parental rights, religious rights, all of that. Representative John Lay, another champion of the 18th Legislative District, will be there. More are coming on, signing up to speak. It's going to be a great event. The speakers begin noon on the north steps of the Capitol. You can go to the informedchoicewa.org, and on the homepage, you'll see a link to this. So you can get all the information that I'm telling you about here and more. And before that, though, what's really cool is before this event takes place, they're going to have two sessions, one on Thursday, January 8th, and one on Sunday, January 11th, online, some Zoom meetings to train you about legislative engagement. So Amber King and some experienced ICWA members will be there so that on this day, on January 15th, when you go, if you speak with legislators, if you make an appointment to go see your own senator and your own representatives, then you'll have a little bit of training on how that goes. So I do encourage you to sign up for that and to try to be a show of force on that day. Again, it's January 15th, and all the information is linked on the homepage of informedchoicewa.org. Let's see, the other bits of business here. The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of KKNW or CHD, and we are not giving legal or medical advice. I think I got through all of the business there. But what we do bring you is information that you can take further, that you can explore to help you live that informed life. To make, there's some things that you can casually just make a decision on, this or that, right? But when it comes to your health and when it comes to your freedom rights, those are things you really have to be educated on, because a lot of us are being misled in the wrong direction. There's a lot of vested interest in people doing things a certain way. And so you do have to take the time to learn, to in order to make those choices for yourself and your family. And of course, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. That's life. But you keep learning. You keep open to new information. And so we continue to try to bring you doctors, lawyers, advocates, individuals, to bring you information to help you in that area, in those areas of your life. And today we have an amazing man. He is a doctor, he's a dad, a natural healer, and he's very active in his life, kind of modeling what we need to do to stay engaged with legislators. His name is Dr. Dale Brown, but he is known in these parts. He's in Tennessee. He's known as the Wild Doc. Welcome to Inform Live Radio, Wild Doc.
Bernadette, thank you so much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's so fun that somebody that I knew in Washington, who's also now in Tennessee, my friend Claire, is here now working for you. Very cool.
Yep.
I love that cool, great teammate. We find each other, don't we? You
Yeah.
find family, you find those individuals that get you, and sometimes it's a bit of a search, isn't it? We're going to talk about that, I think, toward the end. You don't let me forget that we're going to talk about how you go about searching to find those right practitioners and the people in your life that support the journey that you're on. But first, I know that our listeners who are new to you, they want to know how you got to be where you are today. And where you are today is you have your own Wild Roots Wellness Center in Middle Tennessee, and you're a chiropractor. You teach holistic healing. You're into hyperbaric oxygen treatment therapy, which I love. That's a big one. We talk about that a lot on the show.
Nice.
You've got a beautiful family, 5
Thank you.
kids. You grow your own food as much as you can. You live in a cabin. You're kind of living.
Well, we practice out of the log cabin. That's what we purchased here
Okay.
about a year and a half ago, and moved the chiropractic holistic clinic there. We now have a primary care nurse practitioner on staff as well to provide truly holistic primary care, so that it's not a place that you got to go and they're okay with you, not vaccinating, or okay with you not treating your kid with antibiotics when they have an ear infection, but they're actually there to advocate for you and your child, to stand beside you in that choice. If those are your choices, we also, I say that, but I also don't want anybody to interpret what I'm saying is like, oh, if you want to vaccinate and you do that, to me, I always beg people, like, I know I got on this subject because it is very close to my heart, the vaccine topic, but, I would rather your child be under my care, reducing the stress on their central nervous system, helping their body and feeding them appropriately with good nutrition and doing those things, because that's going to lower your child's risk of succumbing to an adverse event to a pharmaceutical. So it's like, if you're going to choose that route, in part, I would rather you still be part of our clinic. That's just not something we provide in this clinic, but we provide truly holistic primary care. We keep people off of antibiotics, Tylenol, things like that. We get them off of medications if they come in our doors with a chronic health condition, or at the time they were in need of a medication. Our goal is to get their body functioning well and get them off those pharmaceuticals so that they can fully express life and healing and health and optimization of their body. So
Beautiful.
you asked, you asked me the question of where did I come from? Why did I end up here? Things like that. I grew up in Ohio. My family was not that big of health advocates. I do have probably some blessings coming from my dad's side, a family making it into their 80s, and just, but it was, probably extra gluten in the noodles and mashed potatoes and, white bread and margarine, like horrible diet, from what I look back, I'm like, wow, how did we really survive on all of that? But I watched my grandma have 11 back surgeries. I didn't necessarily watch her. It was when I was probably first born. She went through multiple back surgeries. I watched a grandfather have a couple different open heart surgeries, a dad dealing with some chronic health issues and things like that. But they just plugged away at life. And I was going the route, though, of I was an athlete, active runner, long distance, endurance athlete. Got to college, played some rugby, was in college, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was actually thinking about being a marine biologist. I took some courses in that direction. I loved being outside in the wilderness. If I got my way and didn't have 5 beautiful kids to take care of and a wife, man, I'd be up in Alaska just living off the land if I could do it. And I can't quite convince my wife and my 5 kids to go do that with me. So I'm here taking care of people in Clarksville, Tennessee. But I was thinking along those lines. Then I thought maybe I'd want to be a veterinarian. And so I thought about that route. And then my cousin, his mother was dealing with cancer for the second go around. And it was through a chiropractor and friends of his. And they took her and they started getting her adjusted. They started changing her diet. They did basically, when it comes to cancer, what I've come to the conclusion is it's like, how do we put as much as we can on the side of health or things that increase your health or help your body, get rid of the things that are contributing to the cancer in your body, tilt your scales in a better direction. And they just did that. They just started doing everything they could to enhance her body's ability to function well. And through doing so, she's still around today and reversed, what they considered back then was terminal, metastatic breast cancer. And in that moment, my cousin Josh, he says to me, at a Thanksgiving, he was sitting, I remember the window in the background, him sitting across the table from me, what you can do with your life, Dale? And I said, I don't know, marine biologist, veterinarian. He says, no, you're not. You're going to become a chiropractor with me. And literally told me to. And I said, okay. I just wasn't dead set on what I wanted to do with life. So that's all it really took. And that was, really at the moment that was God speaking to me saying, hey, Dale, I need you to go this route. And I did. Got to chiropractic school and really just took that core philosophy of chiropractic to heart, that the body was miraculous, amazingly made by the Lord, and the design of the body, in the conduit through which chiropractors really work is the conduit through which the brain communicates out through the spinal cord and nerves and allows the body to function and heal. And I take that core philosophy. Chiropractors can remove interference between the brain and the body. And now in my clinic, I'm really integrating more things that are enhancing the brain's ability to run and regulate and then transmit those signals. And that's where the hyperbarics and infrared and functional neurology and things like that are coming in. So that's kind of what got me into chiropractic school. When I was there, also something that got me fired up was, and you asked beforehand to me and Claire, like what got me into this? I'd say got me into advocacy and got me into like holistic health to the fullest degree I'm at right now, where like, man, it's like, just an example is, I'm not gonna, I tell people like, I think it's a safe pharmaceutical. As far as safety goes, for the most part, there are some side effects, but I'm like, I'm going to take sweet wormwood every day over ivermectin. I don't want to give a dime or cent of my money to the pharmaceutical industry if I can help it. And so that's kind of like a core philosophy for me and how I practice. I don't, there are certain times where if there's not knowledge, if there's not enough knowledge of a better option, I'm not going to say no to somebody and, condemn them for taking a pharmaceutical, but it's like, that's not the route I would go. I would pray, dear Lord, show me another way. Or show me what is your way, what are your provisions, things like that. And that's just an example, But I was in class and just my ADHD brain, I was the kid in high school and undergraduate. And the reality is like I had a teacher, I'll tell you this is a little funny story though. I had a teacher that called me Squirrel Boy, and I legitimately thought it was because she knew that I like to climb trees because I just love being outside. And but nowadays I realize that it's just because I jumped all over the place. It can be a superpower though when you're trying to help people because of the multifaceted issues that really contribute to somebody's health situation. It's kind of like enables me to really see a broader picture, that there's not one single thing that's ever contributing to somebody's health situations. Rarely that. It's almost never that. It's usually multiple factors interplaying that are really putting that into that situation where they're dealing with the health crises. But I digress from that. And I was reading this article in class because, I wasn't paying attention at that time during the first couple, trimesters in school. I was like, learn what I had to do. That's what I did. But I was learning about the pharmaceutical industry and where they were. I was taking hold of a philosophy that was like very, quote, anti-pharma. And I was reading about this recent lawsuit and this, situation with multiple hospitals in the US and multiple medical physicians who are taking money from a drug company for a drug that was to treat a genetic condition of children with severe anemia. And if they brought their levels, the drug was actually beneficial if they brought their blood levels up to a level just shy of normal levels. Like there was a survival benefit in the original research. When they brought their levels up to normal levels, like you and I should have on lab work or above, they saw a greater mortality rate. And so there was this sweet spot of where the drug could actually be beneficial for these kids. And these are children being treated. And what had happened, and the reason it made the news was because the doctors were getting percentage kickbacks for every drug and the amount of drugs they would sell and prescribe. And same thing with the hospitals. And it was to the tune of millions of dollars to medical physicians, these medical doctors. Every year they're getting $1 million, some of them, just for the small percentage of kickback for how much drug they would prescribe. And they were medicating these kids above what is normal. They weren't just medicating them into normal ranges. Some of them were getting so many, they were taught by the pharmaceutical. And you can kind of say, well, maybe the medical doctors didn't really know the original research. And to me, I'm like, well, that's their job, isn't it? To know what the research really said about the drug they're prescribing. And sadly, a lot of medical physicians don't. So maybe they didn't know, maybe they did. Maybe they were doing it out of the love of money. But they were sacrificing these children's lives because children were dying as a result of it. And these doctors were basically, like, to a degree, it's like they were found guilty, but they got found out about, but they never went to jail. And they didn't lose their license. And it ends up being something that, to me, looking at it, I was like, this is so evil. This is so corrupt. And I can't believe the drug companies would incentivize these medical physicians and hospitals financially to do this to someone's child. And I didn't have children back then, but that moment was like an epiphany of like, this isn't just like, oh, we're not quite as ethical as we should be. This is like downright evil, And so that put me onto the path of like really diving in and doing everything I could, even in chiropractic school, to educate people, online. I got on back in the day, it was like, I don't know if it was Google or Yahoo Answers. That was it. Yahoo Answers.
Oh, that's going back. Yeah.
I would play around on Yahoo Answers and I would study my rear end off, oftentimes during class as I'm listening to the teacher as well. There's the gift of ADHD. You can do multiple things at one time. And I would do that. And I would try my best to steer them and get that best answer that they would select and say, this person gave me the best answer. And I would give them this laundry list of things, starting with, a lot of times I'd start with the basic philosophy and principle of chiropractic, start with the way the body, what controls all function of the body, and start with the spine and the nervous system, and then change your diet and nutrition and look at these supplements and herbs. And I would back it with research. And then, when people would ask about vaccines, and then the vaccine topic took me down that rabbit hole of like, holy cow, what more evil can you get than taking the love of a parent for their child to do whatever they could to safeguard the health of their child and the life of their child, and then turn it against that child and that family for in essence, like lifelong profitability. That's what I see vaccines as. They're a way in which you can take an opportunity at such an early age. Thank God for what RFK Jr. and Aaron Siri and others are doing right now, and the new ACIP, committee for not recommending the Hep B vaccine at day one. But it's like at day one, you don't know whether your child has a problem or not, has a chronic illness or not. So these parents that say, my child was born like this, I'm like, if you got day one, the shot, you may have altered it and you never had the opportunity to see truly the way God designed your baby.
Right. Well, and the pregnant women now are urged to get flu, Tdap, COVID, and RSV vaccine. So
Yeah.
4. And then, of course, the day of birth, and then at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. And then all of these vaccine trials, like especially the ones, to look at outcomes during pregnancy, they don't require the child to not receive vaccines.
Yeah.
It's such a muddled mess. How in the world can you determine if that exposure in utero harmed that baby, if the baby's subjected to the exact same junk
Yeah.
through all its early infancy?
And here's a missing piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of people were talking, when we get into adjuvants and different things like that, there's studies in mice that utilize LPS, lipopolysaccharide. It is a polysaccharide made by bacteria in everyone's gut. It's in our body right now. The barrier gut should keep it out of your bloodstream. It can be utilized and transported across the barrier by your immune system to enable a better and stronger response when needed. If it gets across the gastrointestinal barrier when it shouldn't, it is connected to autoimmune diseases and chronic inflammation and things like that. But all they did was take that compound, all right, a substance that we should have in our gut, injected in the bloodstream during pregnancy in rats, and they could alter the fetal brain development. And it wasn't through the LPS, the lipopolysaccharide, getting to the brain and into the brain of the fetus. It was the maternal immune response that altered brain development. And so what is the purpose of a vaccine? It is to initiate an immunological response.
Yes.
An inflammatory immunological response. So by definition, you are inherently doing what they say causes alterations in fetal development, brain development. You're initiating, you're choosing to do that. You could say they argue is what they do. They argue that, well, if you caught the flu, that's worse than getting the vaccine. Actually, the IL-6 studies on the influenza vaccine during pregnancy showed up to a 728% increase. And then once you got the flu vaccine and then you were exposed to the flu, another study that could join with that study shows that the inflammatory responses are greater than if you just caught the flu. And so it's like and so yes, I get what you're saying. You're trying to warn parents out there. It's like it's not just the childhood vaccines. We are doing what the science says alters fetal brain development, and so the risks of it are now huge when we're vaccinating pregnant women.
But it's so difficult, isn't it? When because the facts, if you just calmly present the studies and the facts and what the scientists know, what the researchers, some of the best information is when you read what the the vaccine researchers, they know. They're looking for that sweet spot. They're looking for something that causes an immune reaction, not too big a one, because then people, start having, injury, but not too small, because then they don't get any sort of protection. So they look for that sweet spot. But, every human being is different.
Yeah.
And so it's the whole mass vaccination program is so utilitarian, which is very scary, because it means that public health and this whole industry knows that a certain number of people will be injured by these shots.
Yeah.
And a certain number will be killed. It's unavoidably unsafe. And they're willing to accept that. They're willing to accept the collateral damage. And they never, ever, ever discuss what you were discussing is, okay, what about this brilliant design of the immune system? What can we do to support the infant immune system in order to make sure if they encounter a
Yeah.
virus or bacteria in the world, that they handle it fine. They never discuss that.
Well, you, it was funny when you just started to say, and what you just said, and then you said unavoidably unsafe. I was like, in my spirit, I'm like, I need to tell her the book title that if I were like, I love Aaron Series,
Yeah.
Vaccines Amen. Like, I love it. Love
Yeah.
that title.
Behind me
Like,
here somewhere. Yeah.
it is such a religious cult belief in vaccines. That's when you try to methodically discuss the scientific research with somebody and somebody refuses to even discuss it. It's like you
Yeah.
believe it's a religion. You know, to me, it's like I'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit later, but I would have so many people back in the day before I got censored in 2020 because of speaking truth. I don't think I made the Dirty Dozen, the top 12, but I think maybe I
Darn.
was
Yeah.
13 or 14th, you know, in that list. So the government still, and Facebook took my Facebook and Instagram pages and completely censored me. I had so many people asking me to write a book about vaccines. And I think Aaron Siri has just done a phenomenal job of
Mhm.
it. But the book title that I'd always thought of is Avoidably Unsafe.
Oh, yeah.
You know, their perspective is it's
Yeah.
unavoidably unsafe. Like, you got to get it. You just
Right.
have to get it. In my opinion, it's like, no, you don't. There are so many better ways to fortify your child's health, immune system, and protect them, not
Mhm.
only against these infectious diseases. You will inevitably, by doing the things, it's kind of like, do what I do, and you will inevitably be protecting your child against measles, polio, COVID, everything else, all those infections, plus future cancers. And then you're going to get the
Yeah.
benefits of the
Yeah.
reduction in autoimmune and cancers that are because of the infectious illnesses that we quote unquote prevent by vaccination, like mumps and others and measles, that
Right.
actually have immunological, like, it's like, that's boot camp. Like, that's training before
Yeah.
the soldier goes into war.
Yeah.
The war is the cancer when they're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. That's the war that measles is equipping them to fight in the future.
Mhm.
And when we don't allow them to go through that process, naturally acquired immune training, we
Mhm.
are now putting them at greater risk of chronic lifelong diseases of autoimmune, neurological
Yeah.
problems, and cancer. And so it's like, it's avoidable because when you're taking care of your child and baby, you're breastfeeding. Can we do everything we can to reduce the risks of C-section and things like that? And then can we do everything we can to support the woman to be capable of breastfeeding? And
Mhm.
that takes, from a societal standpoint, from a health standpoint. If we did all of that, we've now literally taken the risk of these infectious illnesses to 0.0001% risk to your child.
Right.
And then you go through those infectious diseases, your child would want to get mumps, want to get measles, want to get those things because of the immunological training to get through that process. I mean, now they want to use measles viruses as a way to combat cancer. There's evidence to say that measles may actually wipe the slate clean and help to reduce antibodies, autoantibodies, things like that, and reset the immune system. And it's like, man, that was God's design, and man mucked it all up.
Right.
Is that okay? I didn't say the F.
No,
I said muck.
mucked it
I
up is
promise. I just want to be
is fine.
clear.
Well, the thing about the measles that the pro-vaccine people always sort of mangle is there are some studies that they once you get the measles and they look afterward, and they're not seeing a whole lot of antibodies from
Yeah.
previous illness circulating. But that doesn't mean that the memory isn't there. And if you continue to read
Yes.
this research, it
Memory is in the
says,
cells.
yeah,
The antibodies are proteins. Memory doesn't come from proteins circulating in the bloodstream. Memory comes from what the cells were trained to produce when they're
right.
exposed.
Yeah, so those very same studies that says, and what they're just putting the headlines, it erases your immune
Yeah.
memory.
Yep.
This
You
is
know
so
the
bad.
ones I'm talking
But
about.
but if you keep reading, it says, however, these individuals, when challenged by these illnesses they had experienced in the past, their immune system responds. That
Yeah.
they actually do have, and then the antibodies return rapidly. So you didn't lose it, but it's that incomplete. They say that we have misinformation. We have got
Right.
so much information.
Yep.
It's them that does.
Yep.
I mean, because we acknowledge that exposure to certain vaccines does uh has reduced the amount of visible, recognizable illness.
Yes.
But
Typical
at what
symptomatic
cost?
illness. Yeah.
Right, at what cost? And that's the thing, is they will not acknowledge the cost. They won't acknowledge what's lost. We
Yep.
threw out the baby with the bathwater. We had no idea how important. That's not even a good analogy, because that bathwater was important. Whatever we
Yeah.
threw out was
Yeah.
important. So,
Yeah.
and
And
what about the thousands of viruses and bacteria that nobody's developed a vaccine for? And how is our immune system, as in infancy, being skewed to not properly respond to those? Because we're
yep.
not allowing that maturity to happen in
Yep.
the way nature designed. Yeah, a whole lot. So, like you, I am very grateful, and I hope this window of time to turn this
Yeah.
ship, to get. Um, I don't
There's,
know how long this is going to last, and that's
yeah.
why we all have to roll up our sleeves and make sure um, that we help propel this forward. This great
Yeah.
health movement, so important.
We can't just sit back and hope that, the doctors are going to follow the quote unquote recommendation not to recommend things. It's like we still have to,
Hmm.
be educating our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, our friends, our loved ones, our churches, any opportunity we can. Like
Yeah.
that's just where my heart is. It's way better for me to prevent a child from getting autism than it is for me to work with a child. I've got this little guy, Dawson, he's speaking now. His mom
Mm.
literally came to me last 2 weeks ago when I sat down for a checkup consultation. We were applying hyperbarics, chiropractic, leucoborin that was not prescribed. She had to seek out after 8 physicians, finally got one.
And that, let me just pause you there, because
Yeah,
that's the one that HHS now and the FDA is recommending to help children on the spectrum
is
speak.
giving, yeah, they're giving more of an open, like they're letting doctors know that if they wish to prescribe it outside of what FDA approval was for, which is cerebral folate deficiency, that it's okay, because we're seeing some up and coming research that shows the possibility of leucoborin, which is folinic acid at a very high amount, can get and cross that blood-brain barrier blockade due
Okay.
to antibodies. Get it in there, get it what the brain needs. And if it's deficient, it can make a big difference. If the brain's not deficient, even if the FRAT test is positive, that's the folate receptor antibody test, even if that's positive, it doesn't mean that we're dealing with cerebral folate deficiency. That's well documented in the research that you can have the antibodies, very high amounts, but still have plenty of folate, methylated folate, and folinic acid in the brain to do what the brain needs. And so I've had a lot of conversation. That's where I kind of land on that. And that's a hot topic here recently. It's like, I'm like, yeah, the FRAT test, but they've also shown that you can, in the research, you can do the FRAT test and have very low to no antibodies, be negative for those antibodies, but then actually a week or two later get tested again. And they've done this, and those antibodies are really high. And so they fluctuate quite considerably. And there's also a connection between, it's another reason why the possibility may not be in an immune panel that you should eliminate dairy, just be only when you're allergic to it. But they actually show that they can decrease folate receptor antibodies by cutting out dairy. That's been shown too. And so
Okay.
it's like some of these kids who are improving with a dairy-free diet, gluten-free diet, there's a lot of mechanisms there too. You can do sensitivity and allergy testing. It doesn't say that you're allergic to dairy. Well, if you have folate receptor antibodies, you may actually definitely want to eliminate dairy. And for many, it may not be that they reduced inflammation in their nervous system, the brain, by getting rid of dairy because they're allergic, but it was actually, it decreased those antibodies, and folate got to the brain like it needed to. And so it's all these little nuances that's
Wow.
kind of like I walk people through, and, and that's now what I'm doing in my clinic. That's what I was going to say. It's like, now what I'm doing in my clinic, I was advocating to try to prevent people from taking steps that would ultimately lead to their child being harmed. And now that we've got Aaron Seary, we got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. there, and we have many people stepping up to the plate now and saying, hey, I want to speak out about the truth, and I want to forewarn people about the risks of vaccinations. I've kind of like shifted my focus now to saying, how do we help these children? How do we heal them? And that's why I started, like, where I came from. I started with chiropractic. I learned the dangers, harms, and the destruction that vaccines and pharmaceutical companies were causing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like I studied nutrition, then I studied functional medicine, and each one of these tools would help a subset of the population. And autism's like a big focus for me in my clinic. You know, those kids, I would see some kids with nothing more than chiropractic. They would speak again. They would regulate. They would be, I mean, a few of them would be off the, would be like undiagnosed, then become
Wow.
no longer within
Mm-hmm.
that diagnostic criteria, meet those criteria to be labeled as autistic. Some of them would speak for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't all of them. And so there was a level of frustration in my spirit of like, I've seen it. It's possible. It's possible with chiropractic, but for some, and I don't know which ones, there's no test to know. In that situation, I tell parents all the time, sometimes you got to recognize the same thing with leucovorin or folinic acid. You got to say the treatment will be the test. Will this help your child? I don't know.
Let's
We're going to
try.
allow the treatment to be the
Yeah.
test. If your child responds,
Yeah.
that's what we're looking for.
And what I love about the holistic approach, so chiropractic care, what are the side effects of chiropractic care? Increased health, a sense of well-being, more energy flow, even if it didn't directly, you know, fix what you went in for. I mean, and what is the side effects of hyperbaric treatment? Increased energy flow, increased oxygen to the,
Yeah.
glutathione production increases. So the the things that can happen to you, even if it doesn't work, are really good things for your
Yeah.
body. So why
Well,
not give them a try?
one of the things I'll like, when I sat down with Dawson's parents, I said, and his mom has given me permission to use his name, obviously not
Oh,
a
good.
last name
Okay.
added to this, but she's like, Dale, I would be like, what I'm seeing, she came in with no hope. Now she's got more than enough hope to move forward.
Oh.
And so, and what I tell every time I've sat down with the parents of a child dealing with autism, I have always said, I don't know how much any one of these treatment implementation, what we do. I don't know how much chiropractic, I don't know how much nutrition, I don't know how much each supplement. I'm like, I know your child will be healthier. God's the only one who knows how much, how soon, and in what aspects your child's going to change for the better. They will
Mhm.
be better off. They will be
Mhm.
better off with less pressure on their spine and nervous system, less stress on that system, and they'll
Mhm.
do better because of it. Will they speak because of that? I don't know. I've seen it in some, but not
Mhm.
all. And that's why then I'm like, well, let's apply the gut brain connection. Let's work on the gut health, things like that. But,
Mhm.
Dawson, he's a perfect example of his stool sample looked immaculate. Like, I'm like, I wish my stool sample looked like that. Like, if we were to judge gut health by the stool sample, I'd be like, this kid's got a better gut health than I do,
Wow.
but he can't speak
Mm.
and he stims and he can't regulate his emotions, and I'm like, so there's something else. And his blood panel, like his immune markers, are actually the exact opposite. If I typed it in, I was like, okay, wait a minute. His neutrophils are supposed to be high. That's what's typical in autism.
Mm.
They're typically in a Th17 immune response, or they're typically in a high Th2 response. But his lymphocytes were really high. Well, that's fairly common in neurotypical children
Hmm.
at that age. And so it didn't fit the script. Like, it did not fit. And so it's like, and I had come back to mom and saying, hey, we're going to do good things for you. They have rented a hyperbaric chamber. They've
Nice.
been doing that for the last 2 months, 3 months. They added in leucovorin here recently. He's been getting chiropractic since day one.
Mhm.
Immediately, we started to see improvements with chiropractic. Immediately within a few weeks, we started seeing, and there's anti-inflammatory effects, oxygenation to the tissues of the brain, with hyperbarics. Which one of these things so far? And we added in some basic nutritional supplements that made sense for a healthy brain and nervous
Mhm.
system. Like, we added things in, but like his lab, there's limited availability in that information to say he fits the script for an autistic child, which then I'm like, well, it's all in the nervous system. What do we do next? And our next step and stage And a lot of the reasons why I did these things in stages and why I practice that way is because I see this could be a topic we could discuss too. I think if I were to give information to the families out there with children with this, is like, we need to recognize how we need to stage a treatment appropriately. All right. Chiropractic can remove a stress on their central nervous system. It can enhance the ability for the brain to communicate out to the gastrointestinal system to regulate inflammation and the immune response through the vagus nerve, things like that. So the reduction in stress is a way to get the body out of a state in which it's, in essence, like it's on fire. It's highly inflamed. You know, if the gut is out of balance, if there's pathogens there, if there's toxins there, if their immune system is out of balance, well, we need to put the fire out, because you don't want to rebuild. And the kind of the reason I'm saying this, Bernadette, I don't know, and answer this. Have you heard of it's a treatment strategy that works for many. It's able to take that child to the next level. So it's amazing. It's primitive reflex integration. It seems like even the OTs and PTs out there are starting to integrate this and talk about it more. Have you ever heard of primitive reflex integration?
What's the first word you're saying in there?
Primitive reflex,
Oh,
or
yes.
infantile reflex.
Oh, yes. I heard about that years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't explored it much, but it seems like, you back them up to those first reflexes when you're born in order for their, to reset themselves.
Yeah.
Real quick, though, I want to remind people while we're talking who you are, Dr. Dale Brown, the Wild Doc. And I want to tell people, if they want to check out your website, wildrootswellness.com, wildroots with an S, wellness.com. You can check out information there, and you're in Middle Tennessee. But yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. And then before their time's up, though, I want, for people who aren't near you, there are brilliant practitioners devoted to true healing all over the United States, all over the world. And I want you to give listeners some advice on how to interview and seek out a good practitioner. So, but before we get there, tell us about this primitive reflex.
So primitive reflexes are like the original software on like your phone. All right. You can download apps to do things that you wish to do better and quicker and things like that. Editing, camera software, stuff like that. But you bring that on as your phone grows and develops, but you have to have that hardwired, original software. And so that's in the nervous system. And so children, once they're born, and even in the womb, their brainstem, their cerebellum have these primitive reflexes. There are reflexes that allow for the nervous system and the motor system, the body, to respond to stimuli. And so it can be brushing their lumbar spine, their paraspinal, and the spinal galant, Babinski, brushing and scraping their bottom of their foot, palmar grasp, infants, you put your fingers in their hands and they just close their hands and grip your finger. It's the palmar grasp. It's, that initial suckling and nursing, response, And so these are survival, but they're also what drive motor responses. And so what happens is when a stimuli stimulates that reflex, you get information from the receptors in, let's say, the palmar grasp. You stimulate the palm, it sends a signal to the cerebellum on the same side. That cerebellum actually will fire up to the motor cortex on the opposite side. And by firing up there, it sends a signal back down then from the motor cortex to the cerebellum on the opposite side again, and then into the hand, the muscles of the forearm, to contract the hand and grasp, palmar grasp. All right. So that's a reflex. Well, it fires this pathway. And then what happens is then the frontal lobes start to develop and recognize that, hey, I can use my hand independently without this reflex. It doesn't have to be stimulated. I can grasp this microphone, my cell phone, without being a mechanical stimulus.
Yeah, I can do it with intent. I can choose to do it.
And then now I can do this all day long, and I'm not sitting here and grasping my finger every time my finger presses into my palm.
Okay.
The reflex is in the background. So when you understand that primitive reflexes, what you're seeing now is the integration of these in children with autism helps their frontal lobe through a stimulus effect fire and wire a little bit better. But it's a tool to help in stimulating an area of the brain that is not functioning well in this population. And these reflexes are oftentimes still present in people who have ADHD and autism or neurodevelopmental conditions.
Ah,
It's also present in people who have strokes. Many of them are present in people who have TBIs and concussions.
hmm.
So it's a sign in an adult who those reflexes went away that their brain was injured.
Wow.
So you have some practitioners actually discussing primitive reflexes as if primitive reflexes are the cause of these problems, like ADHD, poor handwriting, developmental delays. They're not the cause of. They're the indication that the brain is not functioning well, that the frontal lobes and the cerebellum aren't integrated well, and those
Mhm.
reflexes are not being inhibited like they should once the frontal lobe and the higher areas of cerebral cortex come online.
But it almost sounds as if the brain knew when it's injured, and so now it's gonna do a factory reset,
In
and
essence,
it's gonna help you start over. Because
yeah,
so many kids on the spectrum, it's the fine motor skills, they have difficulty. So if
yes,
it, like, resets and then that learning pattern and the neuron connections and all that
yep,
maybe go through that learning process again. I mean, so many things, uh, the allopathic approach, the modern, the for-profit approach, as it were, looks at symptoms and calls them diseases
yeah,
or says they're the problem. But like a sneeze is not a disease. A sneeze is a
yeah,
symptom that your body's trying to cleanse something, right? And so,
yes,
um, just so maybe this is a symptom that's just sort of expressing the
yeah,
attempt to reheal. I think it's a fascinating area of research. And another area, there's a brilliant doctor out, chiropractor out in Washington State, Dr. Sarah Kotlerman with a
hmm,
K. I don't know if you ever heard of her. And she has a really interesting approach to chiropractic care with all these mini sessions,
yeah,
but she's integrated quite a bit of screening for toxicity of heavy metals and things.
nice.
And she takes them through the whole, because if you've got those built up,
Yeah.
then that's going to interfere with the healing process as well.
Total body burden theory is really where it is the most accurate theory. And so
Hmm.
when you can reduce toxins, we can reduce exposures to, that's the chiropractic principle, is the thoughts, traumas, and toxins. So any of those things that we can reduce, then the body's in a better conducive state to function better, because it doesn't have to utilize energy to deal with that, whether it be an inflammatory issue that's being caused by a toxin or the detox mechanisms that take energy away from optimization, and if you lower that, now you've got one less thing that child's body has to carry around.
Yeah.
But, and back to that like idea, like the stepwise process, what I've seen is I am seeing kids come to me and they've done the primitive reflex work, but they've done it before they got the fire under control. It's like that's a
Oh.
great and amazing way to build new neural pathways and build the
Hmm.
structure of the brain and integrate it.
Hmm.
But they did it before they healed the gut,
Ah.
before they
Okay.
got so it's like the idea, what I'm now working on, this is literally what I've been telling clients. I'm like, you're in the process of watching this office go through an evolution, evolving,
Hmm.
a metamorphosis, because I took chiropractic, took functional medicine. I thought the gut brain connection was going to heal then all the rest of the kids in combination with chiropractic, and it increased the percentage of children who were getting amazing results,
Yeah.
and then detoxing and things like that. But when you study autism and neurodevelopmental conditions, it's not as much of it is the retention of those toxins in the body. It is actually the inflammatory mechanisms that are basically ingrained into the child's immune system. It's more of an immunological autoimmune situation.
Ah.
Go back to the leucovorin and why it may have substantial benefits for some children with autism, is because if they have auto antibodies, but then you get into nuances of, it's like, well, mitochondrial dysfunction can decrease folate transport into the brain. So you may have mitochondrial dysfunction that reduces the transport of folate into the brain. So the
Hmm.
leucovorin would help them, but the frat test was completely normal. They didn't have the antibodies. They had a different mechanism. Well, inflammation alone reduces transport of nutrients into the brain, and
Yeah. Well, and you're getting down into beautiful weeds. I'd love to live there. This is really great information, but I do want listeners, especially
yes,
parents of kids, are like, I want to get this, is you don't have to understand this all right now.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself a good practitioner who will share with you, and you are the epitome of a practitioner. You are practicing medicine. You are not saying, I know how to do it. Do
Yeah.
it my way. You're learning as you go, and probably you'll be 95 years old and still practicing, still learning. And I love
Yeah.
that. But I want to encourage people to find a practitioner to be a healing partner in their family,
Yeah.
and who can guide them, tell them, here's the resources so you understand what I'm doing for you, for your child, so they can go down that road as well, and then really understand it. What I love is when it comes down to what you really are doing, it's very simple. I mean, the science is complex,
Yeah.
but it's you change what you eat, you change what you're exposed to, you do some gentle therapies like the chiropractic adjustment. The actual treatments are not difficult, even if the science seems a bit challenging. So tell parents, what would your advice be if they want to go out and begin searching for somebody such as
Yeah.
yourself?
I
Where do you
mean,
begin?
you're going to need somebody, obviously a chiropractor who delivers a quality specific chiropractic adjustment. Like you need that, you know, so you're going to need somebody to do manual labor in your hometown. You're going
Mhm.
to have that chiropractic technician, and so I help people a lot of times find a hyperbaric center, look at the different options out there for rental or, red light therapy devices, things like that. It's like, how do we get all the tools and we utilize them in an appropriate stepwise process? To your question, though, it's like, how do they find somebody?
That
There's
they
very
can
few people
trust.
that can go through all of it. Well,
Yeah.
one, how do they trust? Well, if somebody is promoting a singular cause of everybody's problems and disease,
Mhm.
that may be a factor, and that may be a huge factor in some people's lives, but it's not the factor in everyone's life.
Yeah.
So don't buy a service unless you know for a fact that service is necessary in your case. You
Mhm.
need to find somebody who's going to listen to you, listen to your story, listen to what you've been through, what your child's been through. Because in a person's life story, I tell people, like, the first thing before I sit down, my team sends people an email and says, Dr. Dale, and people will be like, this is very different than any doctor I've ever been to. I'm like, email me your life story. I want it bullet point. I can't read a novel. I'm just asking for what you've been through, when things changed, when things started to occur, when you saw things happening to your child, but when it comes to child, it's like how your child was born, things like that. I'm like, tell me your life story. Because in the life story is where a good clinician is going to figure out what caused this person's situation, or they're going to find clues to start asking the critical questions on how to best recommend the most appropriate tests or treatment strategies.
Okay.
Because if somebody's like, well, what we do is we do mold, or we do parasites, or we do this, and it's like, oh yeah, I have a client, lots of childhood trauma. When it came down to her story, it was very easy for me to figure out what was the biggest contributing factor to her chronic health situation she's in.
Mhm.
It was childhood trauma. It was sexual trauma, things like that.
Okay.
It just was like, if you understand what causes what she's dealing with, you could understand what I need to ask, what I need to figure out. And she
Okay.
didn't open up to me completely in a story. She opened up
Yeah.
to me in conversation. So it's
Yeah.
like, you need a practitioner who's going to listen, not say, because she was offered this, just take this as an example. She was offered by the secretary, she was told she would need to pay roughly $14,000 in a clinic in Nashville
Wow.
to do mold detoxing and parasite detoxing, because the secretary had already told her what she thought this young woman was dealing
And
with.
it
Why
wasn't
she was
even the
trying to heal.
practitioner.
It wasn't even the
Yeah.
practitioner. If they can quote you how much it's going to cost you, then
Yeah.
you shouldn't go.
No,
Because
that
then they're not treating individuals, they're giving a service.
exactly. And we talked right up to the wall. I absolutely
Sorry.
love it. Dr. Dale Brown, no, it's fantastic. The Wild Doc, it's wildrootswellness.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you will come again.
I am grateful for this opportunity, Bernadette. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. You've been listening to Inform Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and CHD TV. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Informed Choice Washington is a nonprofit organization that advocates for healthy immunity, medical freedom, and fully informed medical consent. The right to make medical choices without coercion is fundamental to our civil liberties and a basic principle in all human rights declarations. To learn more, tune in each Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. to an Informed Life Radio and visit the website informedchoicewa.org. It's time to take a stand for medical freedom. Go to informedchoicewa.org today.
Did you know that solutions containing iodine can inactivate viruses in the nose and throat in 15 seconds? And hydrogen peroxide can do it in under 30 seconds. Decades of studies, including many conducted during COVID, have shown that properly prepared and used nasal spray and gargling solutions can reduce your risk of infection, reduce viral load, reduce symptoms, and reduce transmission of viruses. To learn more, go to healthyimmunitynow.org and check out the EFU Challenge. Why spread fear and infection when nature provides solutions? Go to healthyimmunitynow.org today.
The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.